We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain
G'day and
has
welcome
gone.
to another episode of the Mankind podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Clift, and this is the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there is more than one way to be a man. And some of the ways we do that is we talk about sex, baby. And I don't know how I end up in these conversations, how I'm the one usually leading these conversations, probably because I feel like such a white belt in this world. But we thought, why not bring in the big guns? Dr. Lexx James, thank you so much for being here and being on the show.
I'm super excited. You're doing the work because you're doing the work.
Yep, exactly. Got to lean in and hopefully give the listeners a chance to go second. So, known as the Sex Doc, Dr. Lexx James is a sex therapist, educator, podcast host, and media consultant who runs the Institute for Sexual Intimacy with 2 best-selling books on Amazon, most notably These Are My Eyes, This Is My Nose, This Is My Vulva, and These Are My Toes, which was written to help give children of all genders and their caregivers the ability to normalize their body parts. As the host of the Talk Sex with Lexx show, her listeners are given the chance to be a fly on the wall in Dr. Lexx's office as she takes clients through their intimacy challenges. Now, Lexx combines her therapy and education to create a well-rounded experience for her clients with the goal of leading a shame-free sex education movement. So, welcome to the show, and shout out to Dr. Jolie Hamilton for the introduction.
Yes. Hi, Jolie. Thank you so much. Jolie's amazing. I'm so happy to be here. This is such a dynamic project.
It really is. And I have to say, for those listening and can't see the actual image, your t-shirt says Penis Genius.
It does. It does.
So let's start there. What's a penis genius?
Oh, there's so much about the penis that people just don't know, right? I always tell folks, especially when we're doing like a sex positive you, which is basically my theme for this year with shame-free sex ed, not having shame around our body parts, not having shame around our pleasure. Like if you don't know what side of your penis is more sensitive than the other, then you have some homework you need to do. You have some exploration that you need to figure out like, oh, what side is more sensitive than the other on my penis? I don't know. But why don't you know?
I have those fun conversations. Like when my wife and I first started dating and getting together, I was like, believe it or not, like the last 15% of it on the underside, believe it or not, like not the whole thing, just like the last little bit at the end, at least in my case.
Yeah, well, in most cases, that's your frenulum. So for most folks, that's pretty sensitive. It's a great bundle of nerves. But folks tend to not think about like their own pleasure around their genitals, around their body, and specifically folks with penises. It's all focused on the penis, right? Like you tend to miss out on like whole body pleasure because you've just been taught like it's all about the penis. Right. So penis genius means I know a little bit more than maybe regular folks about the penis.
There you go. You taught me something. I didn't know what the bundle of nerves at the end is called. There you go. Penis genius. You know, at 16, I thought I was a penis genius, but what do you know? There's still lots to learn.
Oh my gosh, so much to learn. Such a fun age, but so much to learn.
So explain to me what shame-free sex education looks like, and how does it differ from what our parents, and our children are being presented?
Oh my goodness. So shame is the idea that you are wrong and you are bad and you're unlovable, right? Which is different from guilt. Guilt is you feel bad and somebody makes you feel bad and guilt you into doing something because you feel bad about it. Shame is
and doors open, someone walks in.
Right. And that, right, you feel bad. You're like, oh, you have to smell that too, right?
Before they just left and got out. Yeah.
Exactly. But we've been teaching about sexuality. So not just intercourse, right? SEX, but sexuality, about bodies, smells, size, testy hang, hair, all that stuff with ew. Nobody's going to love you or want you if it looks like this or if it doesn't perform like this. So we've been shaming for a very long time, typically in hopes that one, you don't do it, because that's what we try and do to kids. If we shame them, if we make them feel bad about it or unwanted about it, then they won't do it. And ultimately lead to unwanted
Mm.
pregnancies or possibly sexually transmitted infections. And then two, as adults, right, we're trying to find our connected other partner. And so it's often like, let me not have anything that I can be shamed or rejected
Right.
for, which is impossible. There's 8 billion people on the
Mm-hmm.
planet. Like everybody's going to want something
Yeah.
different. And so shame-free sex ed undoes some of that messaging. So you can really own your own messages that are consensual, that are positive, and then go live your best life in the most pleasure
Mm.
possible.
Yes, amazing. Unshackle those chains of shame around sex. In my time in men's work, it's blown my mind how much transformation has occurred in and around the realm of sex, and how much trauma
Mhm.
occurs there too. The most common narrative is it's the more commonly experienced by women. However, not a lot of people know 1 in 6 men have been sexually harassed or abused, and
Mhm.
it's a
Mhm.
conversation that needs to be had. And we said this in our pre-interview, was I wonder how many dictators and tyrants got taught, I'm using my air quotes here, got caught masturbating to the
Yeah.
wrong thing or the wrong magazine,
Right.
end air quotes. And then now they feel
Mhm.
like they have to get back at the world, or use power to
Yeah.
dominate others because they were shamed.
Right, right, exactly. And same, I know that 1 in 6 statistic is the one that goes around, and I contend that it's
Yeah.
more because we don't look at the sexual abuse of
Mm-hmm.
boys in the same way as we do as people who are queer or people who are
Mm-hmm.
girls, right? So with boys, and I can share because I have permission. My dad had sex at 8 with a
Wow.
babysitter. That's sexual
Yeah.
abuse. 8 years old?
No.
That's sexual abuse.
Mm.
That's not like, oh yeah, kudos, you got some because you were
No.
young. No, no. Like if I met that babysitter, I would have
Mm-hmm.
fought her for my
Mm.
father. Like it's inappropriate. It's not okay. But my dad wouldn't say that he was
Mm-hmm.
sexually abused. He wouldn't say that he was sexually
Yeah.
assaulted. He would say my first time was when I was 8.
There, there really is a lot of destigmatizing conversations to be had around this. Like, there's the common example you may have heard of, like, a male teacher gets caught having sexual relations with a female student, and then the male student gets caught having sexual relations with a female teacher, and dudes are high-fiving and being like,
Mm-hmm.
nice, yeah, like, heck yeah, like that guy.
Yeah.
um it,
Yeah.
it, People don't fully understand the trauma that occurs in those power dynamics, and how
Mm-hmm.
easily
Mm-hmm.
manipulate, how easy it is to manipulate.
Yeah, yeah, and this whole it chapped my ass.
Mm.
I'm not even gonna hold you. This whole idea of women perpetrators are looked at as, oh, she fell in
Mm.
love with this 14-year-old, 15-year-old
Mm-hmm.
boy, and she wanted to have his baby, versus like male teachers are just looked at as like sexual predators. And I'm like, they're both
Yep.
sexual predators. And women typically get off with lesser sentences. They oftentimes will have more
Mm-hmm.
access to their victims after being found
Jeez.
guilty. And it's completely problematic because again, we're big upping, you smash that older
Mm-hmm.
chick, because this whole idea of what masculinity has to be performed
Mm-hmm.
so men can feel valid is complete made up bull.
Mm-hmm. So let's go there. Notches on the headboard, right? I remember counting. I remember counting and being like, oh yeah, it's up to whatever arbitrary number, and then talking to my friends about that and wanting to recount sexual experiences. And there are some sexual experiences that are fun to recount because they're wild, crazy, sure, but from a place of, it's from a cleaner place than like trying to up myself to be some performer, some stud,
Mhm.
which you get
Mhm.
to a certain age where you're like, that is not a measure of success anymore. That really isn't.
No.
As a married man with a kid, you know, um, so I'm. Where do you think that has stemmed from? And you know, I'm sorry. One moment, quick pause. Are you getting like a high? I'm just gonna do a quick audio check if that's okay.
Okay. thing on my end. I had you freeze a little bit in the
Okay.
beginning.
I'm getting a whistle and like a really high pitch buzz right now. Do you mind checking your audio? I just muted you to see if it was coming on your end.
That's so
Yeah, let me
weird.
time check this too.
I don't think anything else is plugged in.
Okay, whatever you just did, fixed it.
Oh. Yeah, there's literally nothing else plugged
Strange.
in.
Yeah, it was like this this high pitched buzzing. Yeah, sorry about that.
Note to self: get new headphones. No,
I just had to upgrade myself. My old faithful was no longer faithful to me on that one, so I can easily.
These are like my wired ones.
Again.
It just happened again. I'm gonna see if I can fix it again. And
yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what would be happening. What's going on?
Me either. It also just might be time for a new laptop.
Mine's starting to threaten its existence.
I have random keyboard things. It's like we're gonna type 2 numbers today.
Yep.
I don't know why. Are you still getting a high pitchness?
I'm not getting it now, but I'll let you know if it comes through.
Okay.
So we're at 11:20, and we'll pick it up. Cool. I timestamp, so it's easy to cut.
I'm glad about that.
All right, 3, 2. So yes, like notches on the headboard. I remember that time in life where that was such a measure of success. We're talking late teens, early 20s. I remember counting. I remember thinking like, oh, I'm at X arbitrary number to, I'm not going to flex right now. Nor do I think there's anything to flex about, but you know, that was a measure of success. That was a measure of worthiness. And, you know, I could, you know, I could say, oh, well, it comes from the man box, but I want to ask you, like, where does that stem from? Where do you feel like it's put into us as young boys or men to use that as a measurement tool?
Yeah, so it's I think it's partly natural, right? So in nature, we have all of these ways that the male species attracts the female species, right? If you all had tail feathers, you'd put on a dance.
Yeah, we've
and
seen
we'd be like, who dances
David
the
Attenborough
best?
like dances. I get so much joy
Yes.
watching those things.
Right, so I'd be like, yes, this is who I want, right? And somewhere along the line, we were taught that a man's value increases with the number of bodies he gets, whereas a woman's value decreases because she's been used up.
He's the
right?
stud, she's the
And
slut,
so
like that. Yeah,
exactly.
golly.
And so that, and also we unfairly expect men to know everything about sex and sexual pleasure. We unfairly expect men to be mind readers. You're all supposed to be like Xavier, Professor X, and be like, oh, I know exactly what they want right now because I'm the best lover ever. And boys get coded this message very early. It's why they start to research using porn, which is like the poorest tool to research because that's not what sex actually looks like. And everybody is literally an actor. So they're trying to use those tools to be like, I'm supposed to know. I'm supposed to know what a woman wants. I'm supposed to know how to please a woman. I'm supposed to know exactly what she needs. And I can't have it be on my reputation that I am bad at this because then nobody's going to want to sleep with me.
And the social score goes down. And on that, I remember when I was younger, I had a much older partner, and I remember her being like, stop, just stop. And I was pulling out all these moves in porn that I had thought and you know, thought were what you do, like these kind of posing moves and all the rest. And she's like, stop, move your hips, learn how to move your, like actually like tilt your hips, move your hips, don't try and use your whole body as a plank or whatever. And I had no idea, I had no frame of reference,
getting a full workout,
but I had someone able to kind of coach and guide, and so we opened a dialogue to be able to find out like what each other wanted and what each other liked, as opposed to me having to guess that, because I remember the pressure being like, she's 10 years older than me. Like, I mean, she's probably had all these sexual partners, and I'm a chump. I'm a young kid who doesn't know anything, nor am I even confident in the size of my penis. So like, there's that. So there is so much. I remember the fear absolute fear.
But also, like, remember sleeping with the people your age and like sleeping with women and girls, and they didn't
Right.
know. They didn't know what they liked.
Sure. Yeah.
So they couldn't tell you. They were just like, I have to make this person feel good.
Yeah.
And so then we got people who are lying to others. Like, yeah, I came.
I
Sure.
knew it.
And then we have the
I knew
orgasm
it.
gap. Right. And now we like, this is why. This is why the orgasm gap
Right.
exists. Because we have a whole bunch of people out there thinking that they're doing a great job when they need to learn how to move their
I
hips.
don't want to assume. What's an orgasm gap?
So there is a gap between men and women when it comes to orgasms. The largest gap is between heterosexual men and heterosexual women. So heterosexual men like say that they orgasm about 98% of the time that they have sex. Heterosexual women, it's something like 38% of the time. But homosexual women, it's like 88% of the time. Homosexual men, I think it's still like 92% of the time. My numbers might be slightly off, but basically, between straight women and straight men, a whole bunch of straight men are coming. A whole bunch of straight women aren't.
Forgive my naivete, and I know I'm not the first person to ever say this, but is it because you believe that the person knows their body more akin to their partner being of the same same sex, right? Like,
yeah. Well, no, I think it's because women who are sleeping with men don't tell them the truth.
Right.
I think women are lying to men for ego.
Really?
Because like it could be deflating. Be like, look, that sucks.
Right. Yeah. So they're trying to protect the
fun.
man's ego by saying like, oh yeah, that was me and my wife have to have a conversation after this.
It's a good way to check in. It is a good check-in. Good check-in. I think that's a great idea.
Especially postpartum, things, obviously there's things
change. Yeah.
But yeah, so there is this gap. What would you attribute the gap to being between heterosexual partners?
Oh, so lack of knowledge and also a belief that the penis is the end all be all to sexual pleasure. So up to like 77% of women do not orgasm from just penetration alone. Right? So they need something else. So it's a very small percentage. But some men are just like, let me get in there. This is great. And as my mother says, they want to fuck you through the headboard. And she's like, people actually don't want that regularly. No. Some folks might, but most folks don't.
Time and place.
And you're relying solely on your penis. Yeah, if you're relying solely on your penis for sexual pleasure, because that's where you get most of your sexual pleasure from, there's probably going to be a mismatch.
That is, I can, in my experience with my wife, I can definitely like attest to that. Very rarely is there a time and place where it's like, rawr. Right? But more often than not, it is like it's slow, it's communicative, it's it's taking. Cool. Ready to rock?
Yep.
Alrighty, so please excuse some technical difficulties, but we are back, and where we were at was that, oftentimes proper, like, I don't want to say proper, but the greater intimacy of sex with my wife has often taken it slow, communicating, and just like really, even after as long as we've been together, trying, testing, different little things that often yields a chance for me to beat my chest and be like,
making somebody like, I think specifically making a woman come is one of the best feelings ever. Like
more than what I feel, let's just say it. Yes.
You're like, yes, I did it. Like the first time I did it, I was like, this is what it's about.
There you go.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to do that again because you feel so accomplished.
Yeah, 38th percentile. Yeah. Facts. So
also, you're talking about play though. You're putting the play in pleasure, which is amazing. So you're trying out little things, figuring out what's fun. And I think that's the part of pleasure that we kind of get away from because we get so orgasm centric. It's supposed to be play. And actually research does show that typically right after a woman ovulates, so after she's no longer like able to get pregnant anymore, she actually really likes oral sex, performing and giving, typically, if that person likes it. And they're very sexually satisfied with just closeness. They don't actually have to have like physical intimacy, but they just want closeness. And that is also really sexually gratifying.
Wow. I can imagine our listeners just pulling the car over, pulling out the notebook and scratching notes down. And let me repeat that. Say that again. So yeah, no, I think there's something to be said about the play element for sure. And I think a cool thing that's come up in our relationship is the ability to kind of advocate for the other person's needs. If the other isn't feeling it, really like, yeah, it's not going to be mine today. It can be yours. And there's joy in that too.
Absolutely. Especially like you all are postpartum like recently, right? And we talked, I'm 7 months postpartum at this point, and we have 3 kids running around. So right. So things can be in our house have to be very timed, sometimes very quick, and sometimes very quiet, depending on what's happening.
Sure.
But with all of that being said, it doesn't always have to look like actual intercourse. It can just be, you know what? I don't want to do this. I'm not really in the mood. And I really, really urge lovers not to do it. Right. If your lover says they're not in the mood, do not like just slam your dick on their butt and be like, come on. Right. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get a dead fish. They're just going to kind of lay there. It's not that much fun for you. It's not that much fun for them. And that's a great slide right into resentment.
Right.
And that's not fun, nor does a happy relationship it make.
Gotcha. Resentment how? Just because it isn't like, it doesn't feel, is it a consent thing or is it I mean, there's nuance to it, I'm sure, every relationship.
It's not as much as a consent thing, because what happens is they acquiesce, but it feels like an object, right? It feels like just being used like an object, that my needs and my concerns aren't pressing. So I usually hear the other side. So I hear the horror stories of like, well, my husband didn't want to wait 6 weeks because they were just in such dire need that I had really painful sex. Like
after having a baby.
I've heard horror stories of nurses walking in, and because the person was still numb from birth, they were having sex.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. With a wound. Like that's a wound.
No. Yeah.
Some
like
people like blood. That's
what
fine.
What if she tore? Yeah. Like what if she?
Right.
I mean,
she can't feel it. She can't feel it, Brandon. So she's okay, and the doctors will just sew it back up.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Wow. So like there's that, and that's extreme, but it happens more often than not. But also being touched out, always having somebody on you, having a bunch of people, including a little person, literally depending on you to live.
Yes.
Also doesn't make for sex to want to happen. Like you're learning your body. There's a bunch of fluids leaking out of your body. You're exhausted. You're hearing phantom cries in the shower, even though the kid isn't crying. And now it's like, oh, come here. Let's please your body. But it's more about pleasing my body. It's not fun.
Yeah. I can speak on what you're saying.
And also we rule out mutual masturbation. One of the things, well, my lovers sometimes hate me, admittedly, and they also cheat. I always give them the homework to abstain from sex. Right. When we first get together, I'm like, okay, no sex for 2 weeks. And the one time I felt bad because it was somebody's birthday, and he looked at me, he was like, but today's my birthday. Like, I'm gonna get freaky dirty sex today because it's my birthday, Dr. Lexx. I was like, you better get it in before midnight, so it'll start tomorrow. But
right.
We take it off the table to take that pressure away.
Got you. Oh, so you're in open relationships?
No, when I'm working with couples.
Working with couples.
Are so monogamous.
Okay, got you. That's what you mean by your lovers are your. Got it.
My couples that I work with, I take sex right off the table to take the pressure away. And what happens is most people feel like they sneak and get it in, and it's exciting, right? It's exciting to not almost be caught, or it's exciting to go against some authoritative figures. But it's also exciting not to feel pressure. And I see this with men. They're often afraid of rejection all of the time because they're always the initiators, because women haven't gotten the permission to be the initiators.
So there's something to that. This is I'm very cognizant when it comes to this show. It's very easy to get people listening that might see things from kind of like a red pill lens, or perhaps a more progressive lens. But I think there can be truth in a lot of areas. And one thing I have learned from some of the red pill folk that I follow, not that I'm a red pillar at all, but I think I need to follow these people to see where a lot of these narratives are coming from, is that, what if it was socially acceptable and normal for the woman to take the tab, to pay for the first date, or to initiate in sex. And I'm curious of your thoughts around that, and from your lens, how you view that.
Oh, I see it as so liberating. And so people are all like, justice, equality, equity, right? I really believe in liberation, which is the removal of obstacles that are in the way of our pleasure and joy. I want to get the ideas of what and who should do what out of the way. Do what works for you, right? If you want to take your man on a date and pay for everything, maybe that's going to feel really good because it's not threatening his masculinity. He's not less of a man because he didn't pay for a date. He's not less of a man because his, woman is initiating sexual contact desire. Like, I want you to come please me. Please do this. Are you up for it? And they're not less of the man if they say no. They're like, no, I had a really hard day. I don't feel like dicking around. I'm good. Like, I'm gonna chill. And that's absolutely okay too.
That is liberating to hear you say that, because there is that argument that some people make around initiation, that men feel this pressure to go up and walk up to the girl, and they're the ones having to risk the rejection. Yet they do it the wrong way, if they look the wrong way, if they come on too strong or whatever, there's risks there, like very real risks, that can be very damaging to a person's confidence. And so what if we lived in a world, in a society where it was like, look, no, but hey, good on you for going for it, right? Not get away from me, you creep, or whatever, or that hard rejection. I don't know. I would feel, if I take myself back to my dating years, that, I don't know, if a woman came up and tried to initiate with me, I'd be like, wow, that's so nice.
I might have gotten laid a lot by going up to people and being like, I think you're really sexy. And it just so happens they thought I was sexy too. And we could go do what we wanted to do. So it worked for me. And I will say that rejection, people tend to take so personally when it's really, it's not typically personal, right? So you're going up to somebody in a bar and they say, no, thank you. They don't know you. They don't know who you are. They don't know anything about you. So they can't be rejecting you personally. They could just be in a bad headspace.
Yes.
Right? They could just have a bad day, or they could just not want to talk to people, or they're just here literally to get a drink and dance the night away because they're dealing with stuff. It has nothing to do with you. So I really try and teach people that rejection is really about the other person trying to take care of themselves. They're not ready to be in with you. They're not ready to engage in whatever personhood you want to engage in. And yes, you want to engage in that personhood, and it sucks that you're not able to do so in the moment. And it's not a comment on who you are as a whole person. It is just a moment. Yeah,
I like that. So it's kind of like, it's the meaning you make of it really more than anything. And it says less about the other person, for sure. The big thing I want to cover while we're together is talking about, shame-free sex education and what that looks like, starting with our young people. But before we do that, I would love your take on pornography. Because that's been something. So I haven't touched pornography since my daughter was born, which I found really intriguing, because I never realized until then that I just turned 30. I'd been using porn more, like over 50% of my life.
Yeah.
At that point, I started when I was like 14.
Yeah.
And to go without it, it was amazing how caveman I felt. To want to just pull my phone out and and jump on and use it. And I'm curious of your take, because, you'll hear people say, well, you don't know if those women are trafficked, or you don't know the circumstances. But then I speak to sex workers that love it, that are all for it. They love the expression. So I'm curious of your thoughts and what it could look like in a healthy and an unhealthy.
Oh, I'm loving this. I'm going to give you some naked homework after this. So 14, you're actually a little bit late.
Right.
The average age right now is like 11. And before, when I was a little bit younger, I was like 13-ish.
Wow.
Yeah. So 14, you're just, a little bit on the later side with discovering pornography.
Late bloomer.
And it's also the type of pornography you're consuming. So there is like male gazed created pornography is what it's basically called. So it's kind of like from the male perspective. This is where you're going to see the big sausage meat pizza type. Or did you call a plumber? I'm here to lay the pipe. Right. So that's where you're going to see that type of porn.
Gotcha.
Right? It's some huge guy with a ridiculously huge penis that's hard for hours with some petite person who's hairless and screaming her head off. Like, that's what you're going to see. But there's an entire different genre, which is called feminist-based porn. It's a lot of feminine producers. It has a lot of consent built into it. There are all sorts of body types. So if you're a person who likes slender people, there's slender people. If you're a person who likes more push-in for the cushion or cushion for the push-in, there's a little bit of more cushion for the push-in. But it's a variety. It's typically less racist, less sexist, and has a bunch of different caveats, but looks more like actual sex. So there's that. And we have trained boys to turn towards the internet and pornography to learn about sex because nobody wants to teach them.
Right. Because nobody wants to teach them. Where is Fred Rogers when we need him?
Tell Amy's so good.
I know.
So good.
I miss
Very
Fred.
Gentle.
Yes.
But nobody wants to teach them. So there's this inherent idea that all men are bestial and can't control themselves, which is crap, which is absolute. Like, no, you all are able to control yourselves. Yes, you have base desires, just like everybody has base desires. I don't think penises have to be weapons. They've been wielded as weapons. They've been used as weapons. They do not have to be weapons. And we too often treat them like they're weapons because that's the only way people have known to be safe, which is, it sucks. Like, it sucks.
There's, in our work in the Mankind Project, we talk a lot about the wild man, the inner wild man that's carnal, that's primal, that sees someone beautiful walk down the road and think, oh, I just, want to taste and gnaw and grab. And but it's something that is often repressed by our mothers. You can't be loud, you can't be wild, you can't be aggressive, you can't be these things. I say mothers, it's also broader society. But when the wild man doesn't get authentic expression or a chance to be given breath, it gets repressed. And so when I've had too many beers and someone walks into me at a bar and knocks my beer over, this rage, this uncontrollable feeling comes out. I think often as well, when we see cases of sexual abuse, what was repressed in that person, right? What if, and I don't know if I have answers, I certainly don't, but, I've seen people express their wild man in ecstatic dance and seen them express it in, doing some plant medicine journeys, or I've experienced it and been told of experiences where the partner is just like, take me, just take me, and they want to be taken and they want to be controlled. And so I see there's these healthy expressions of wild man energy, but when it isn't given voice, when it isn't given a chance to be humanized, to identify and understand that it's there, it can come out in a very toxic and dangerous fashion.
Yeah, I concur with you on so many of those points. And I think the key part there is repression, because I don't think it's just the wild man that's repressed. It's the human that's repressed.
The whole human.
Specifically for men. Yes. Men aren't allowed to be joyous and dance because then they're gay. Men aren't allowed to laugh too loud because then they're gay, right? They're considered weak. They're considered sissies. They're feminine or whatever it is. And so the first victim of patriarchy are boys. because they're taught to castrate their feelings. Stop crying. You're all right. That didn't hurt. It did hurt.
Yeah.
That hurt. Like, I have a right to access pain and a feeling. I am disappointed. I am feeling rejected. I am feeling less than.
Man box.
Like, right? And cone of silence gets put right over that man box.
Yeah.
And so all of those things get repressed. And then I feel powerless. I feel voiceless. And I want to exact power over someone else. And the someone else is somebody weaker than me. So it's either a child or it is a woman. And they exact power over those folks.
Yeah. I can see that. I've been a perpetrator of that and been a victim of it. So I can definitely see how that comes out and how that comes into play for sure. Let's get into this now. So let's get into this shame-free sex ed, because I have felt the shadowy, I have done shadowy shit because of my shame around sex.
Thank you for being honest. Yeah.
I mean, look, I want to, because I did an interview which hasn't posted yet with a guy named Christopher Hemmings, and he very boldly and very bravely owned up to the toxic shit he's done when he was in college.
Yeah.
And I will own that I was at a festival once and there was a girl on top of a guy's shoulders and I grabbed her backside, and that's not cool. But I remember in the moment not even thinking twice, because it was just, whether it was justifiable or not, it's something I felt like I could do, and that's not okay, and that's not cool.
Right.
But it happened, and there are other expressions of that coming out sideways from repressed sexual shame. So was there ever like an inciting moment, or what has been your call to get into this space, and what need is being fulfilled?
I'm trying to think of
this
so
movement.
The call, I think the call is hard because I've been in the field for over a decade, right? So I got my doctorate very early. I got my doctorate when I was like 28. Right. I didn't like school. I went through it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, sure.
I finished really early. So I've been a therapist, and I finished my master's degree when I was like 25 or 24. So I've been doing therapy for a very long time now. So I just realized it might be almost like 18 years. And I'd always wanted to work with people in relationships and around sexuality. And I wanted to help them reduce this idea that you're not worthy. And I'm a recovering Baptist, so I'm from the South. I used to be in church every Sunday and Wednesday, and occasionally on Thursdays and Saturdays. And this idea that the God that created you, put you on this planet to suffer, never sat right for me.
Yeah.
Like, if God made you in his image and loves you unconditionally to a point where all you have to do is repent for your sins and you were forgiven without any animosity, why would he want you to suffer? So I never believed that. I was like, this doesn't make sense. And I see people suffering just with themselves, whether it's with their body and being comfortable in their body. And I'm a fat Black woman, right? So there's that for me, and society telling me that I'm not attractive and not pretty and not wanted and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And all those constructs. And there's men with small penises. There's men that don't have abs. There's men that have bellies. There's men that are hairy. There's men that are balding. And so all of those messages that said that you're not good enough and nobody's going to want you. And I wanted to help people undo those messages, because it's not fair. It's not something I think that we're supposed to be walking around with. And then we're robbed of pleasure. We're told to be quiet as children. We're told to not have our voices. We're told to betray our bodies. You're still hungry. Eat the rest of the stuff on your plate. Oh, you're not still hungry. You ate everything on your plate.
Right.
Right. Oh, pain is weakness leaving the body. Push. Right. We're taught to betray our bodies over and over and over again. And then when we get to an adult, we don't know what feels good. And we definitely don't know how to inhabit that with others. So I want to interrupt that cycle, because it's been passed down so many generations, because they thought that would save us. They thought shame would save us because that's what was done to them.
We're taught to betray our bodies. Yeah. It was interesting watching my wife go through her pregnancy because she's in wellness. She runs a humongous wellness program for a large company, and there's this expectation to be in shape. And growing up as someone who, she was quite large, she got into fitness to lose weight. But then she said one of the worst things you can do for your mental health is get in the fitness space. Because there's an expectation to keep a certain form. And then the message that is then portrayed and that's what I'm looking for. It's perpetrated. It just continues, right?
Yep.
And then watching her go through the pregnancy and this dichotomy of this beautiful blessing, this gift, and oh, what are you doing to me, right? And watching her go through that message wasn't hers. That shaming, she didn't come up with that. That was given to her on a silver platter, thanks to how society, like, pregnancy is this thing that happens to you. It's like you are weakened now that you are pregnant. And Christine's like, I feel stronger than I ever have.
Yes.
Performing such a miracle.
Yeah.
And these messages are so strong. And I have had to catch myself. I mean, I'm no Yoda. I'm still a white belt in men's work. I mean, I've been around 8 years now. And I still find myself uncomfortably making dick jokes or something, depending on the crowd, and then going, who in this room has a serious challenge with their penis? And who did I just hurt by making that throwaway common comment that you'd hear in any locker room? I mean, this was at a bloody country club environment too, so it happens everywhere. There is so much unpacking to do around this of how we are. Yeah, man.
And then how men have been taught to treat women's bodies and people's bodies when they're pregnant, right, as weakness. Right, despite the fact that pregnancy sex can be some of the best sex for people.
I concur.
Yes, right. Like all of the blood flow, the juiciness, I don't care if I'm on top and you see my belly.
Yeah.
Like you might be able to go harder than usual. So some of that caveman might come out. The frequency.
Hormones, yeah.
And it's healthier, right? The more sex a person can have, specifically vaginal, actually helps when it comes time for them to help push the baby out. Sometimes we even use orgasms to help stimulate labor.
Wow.
Because it has uterine contractions. We need those to help get a baby out. All right. And there's no chance that you're actually penetrating the cervix. The baby's not going to grab your penis, right? No. All that type of stuff. But the idea, and I've heard so much trauma with men being like, I can't sleep with my wife because she's pregnant and I'm going to break her. Or I don't find her attractive because now she has this big belly and that's unattractive to me. Right. And this person that you've decided to bring a life into the world with, you're considering now unattractive and not wanting. You don't want to have pleasure with them. You don't want to share pleasure with them because of messages that are not your own. And we have to remember, we're society. Us as a people, all of your listeners are a part of society, which means we all have the power to change the narrative. Each and every one of us can interrupt that message.
Yeah. There is, oh my gosh, you are incredible. I mean, I am taking furious notes here. We're taught to betray our bodies with messages that are not our own. And shame, of all the emotions, shame is, in my judgment, the least productive. Because I akin it to being knee-high in mud. Just trying to move this way or that way to try and get rid of it. I hate it as a tool, and I'm with you. I'm in the South. We're in Tennessee here, and I have never experienced so much religion. It's just everywhere. Compared to where I grew up in Australia. Australia being a predominantly atheist agnostic country.
Right.
Welcome. Yeah. Well, so Christine and I are trying to find a church. I'm not Christian, but I love the idea of going somewhere, somewhere for Bindi to form her own opinions. Christine gets to, scratch her own itch with her faith. But you know, somewhere where I can get some like motivational speaking. But what doesn't work for us is this the sinful shame-based preaching of you are a sinner, you have to repent, you have to, whereas Christine's like, nah, I'm a bit more about a redemptive God, you know. God that's like, hey,
we're in the King James version versus the
yeah,
old Bible. Got it. We're not fire and
sure.
brimstone anymore.
No, even though the fire brimstone has more dragons and fancy stuff.
Look, Jesus flipped tables and cracked whips.
There you
People
go.
wanted, like, Jesus flipped tables and cracked whips. So, and sat and had dinner with whores. So
There you
people
go.
want to paint this picture.
Sure.
But okay.
But how much of, and I have some stories that aren't mine to tell, but I've witnessed sexual shame, well, the results of sexual shame in, you know, I was living in Utah and did a lot of work with LDS men, and golly, I've never, having not experienced what they experienced, I've never been so angry to hear what happens. Same in Australia, and you hear an experience of guys who have just been completely kneecapped sexually because of they were playing mummy and daddy with their cousin when they were 6, and the aunt caught them and drugged them out in front of the whole family and shamed them.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry. Fuck that. Like,
Yeah.
that is not the world I want to bring my daughter into. And so what is the opposite of that? How do we create a new world? I'm curious, like magic wand, Lex, what is your vision enacted look like for children and adults as we navigate the space and try and create healthier forms of communication and education around sex?
My heart breaks for that 6-year-old kid, because what happens is we lean so much into innocence that we forget that it doesn't mean ignorance.
Innocence doesn't mean ignorance.
No. And we hear that, right? We want to keep our kids innocent. They don't need to know these things until puberty. And I'm like, whoa, that's not true. If you taught your kid how to clean themselves, you're a sex positive parent. If you tell your child that they're beautiful, you're a sex positive parent, right? Because sexuality isn't just what people do with genitals. It's gender identity and being comfortable in the body and forming safe relationships and recognizing that that's a Mr. Raper person. Like, that person is 28 and I'm 12. Why are they talking to me about going out on a date? That's dangerous. Like, that is being a sex positive parent, right? We have the shame in us. We don't have to pass it on. And it was passed on to our parents. It was passed on to our grandparents because they thought it was going to keep us safe.
Yeah.
And it didn't. It didn't. We know teens who were sexing. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But they didn't have access to internet at their fingertips. They didn't have any of the research that we know that we have. And so my thing, I will say my impetus started because I see so much and I hold so many stories about what humans do to other humans. That is awful. That is awful. And I remember hearing, well, we teach kids the proper anatomical names. We say a penis is a penis, a vulva is a vulva, and elbow is an elbow, in order to help them report if something has happened to them. And when I had my own kids, I was like, hell no, what? No, I'm not trying to get to a point where they have to report. I want to get to a point where we prevent. Right? And so with more knowledge, we prevent. So my kids say vulva and penis. It was one of their first 5 words for my 2, and they're 5 and 4. One's about to be 6, and I have a 7-month-old. And at 3, they knew these words. So if they came home using a different word, a purse, a pocketbook, right, a down there, I know somebody has been talking to my kid about their genitals. And now I need to get curious.
You get to get curious.
Or another kid has been talking to my kid about their genitals.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm protective. Also, you can't shame my kid. Well, you just said this about your vulva. If you don't do this, I'm going to tell your mom. And my kid going to be like, my mom knows I say stuff about my vulva all the time. Tell her.
Yes. Yeah, no.
Like, and do what?
Yes. So what you're doing is, giving them the ability.
We're disempowering folks who would try and have power over our kids. by giving them knowledge. That doesn't mean my kids are any less innocent because they know what a penis is. I will tell you super quickly, my oldest had an incident in the bathroom where a little boy pulled his pants down to show his penis to the kids. Like, he's just playing in the bathroom. It wasn't anything insidious. He's 4. Like, it wasn't a thing. And my kid said, put your penis away. That is inappropriate in this area. Right. But the girl next to her was scared. She was like, what is that? How come they have that? It's not the same. And my kid was like, that's a penis. Some kids have penises. Not all boys have penises, but that boy has a penis. He needs to put it away. And then told the teacher. But she wasn't scarred from the incident. She didn't invite him to her birthday party because he was being rude.
Sure.
But that was it for her.
Yeah.
And she's already forgotten about it. It's not a core memory.
It wasn't a core memory. Nor did she feel compelled to shame him, which I think is powerful too, because he's a boy. He's a child. He's borderline toddler.
Exactly.
At that point, right? Yeah. I mean,
there.
One of my nephews, up until the age of 5, his favorite thing was drop run. There's a party going on, pants are off, and he's running around in circles like a Superman.
There you go.
Yeah. And no one was shaming the kid. Actually, we were kind of just, it was entertaining, really. Like the freedom. Wow, the freedom to be able to do that.
I don't like pants either. Pants are trash. I agree.
So a common conversation that's happening around sex education now, we've seen a lot of tension in Florida, where people are, and parents are rightly concerned about their kids, but what is being taught, how is it being taught? We had this conversation before we started that you said that as an educator, there is a national, like, there are guidelines, there are boundaries of what you can and can't teach. And you said that there are people who are teaching sex education that isn't age appropriate, that they're stepping outside of those boundaries, which I guess is what a lot of these parents are concerned about.
So a slight readjustment, right? There's not necessarily a whole bunch of people that are teaching outside. It's assumed. It's assumed that somebody's going to go and teach 3rd graders how to have anal sex. Nobody's doing that. That's not part of our national sexuality standards, right? But when parents see words like, oh, we're going to be queer-based, right? Or we're going to have queer inclusivity, people are like, you're going to teach my kid how to suck a dick. Like, no. We're going to say maybe some people sometimes have identities where they feel attraction to the same gender. That's called being a lesbian, a gay person, or queer. And that's it. That's as far as it goes. And it talks about navigating relationships with all people. It talks about interacting with interpartner violence, because we've seen a rise in that with teenagers. So the thing in Florida is people are talking about, like, don't say gay, or you're going to try and make our kids trans. No, trans kids exist. Trans kids have existed since the beginning of time across all global civilizations. There have been the Chibodaros in Angola, the Muses in Mexico, the Mahu in Hawaii, the Two-Spirit people on Turtle Island. They've existed across the Hydras in India, across all time.
Right.
But they have systematically been erased and literally, like, unalived over time. Where like colonizers fed people to dogs because they were different.
So people may be reacting to, because of legislation, because of society opening its collective mind, right, and creating more acceptance. Many might feel their experience being like, boom, out of nowhere. There's all these trans kids that popped up out of nowhere, whereas you're saying they've always been there, and many of them have followed heterosexual norms and done the thing that was expected of them because of the body parts they were born with, but then they weren't necessarily given a safe enough environment to go, I am trans. I am actually not.
Or they never even saw another trans person.
Right.
We're worried about, like,
so it's not modeled.
2% of the population. But meanwhile, we still have laws in the books that say children can get married with their, like, parents' consent. We still have 14-year-olds getting married to adult people because of laws that are still in the books, but we're not going after those laws. We're going after, these folks that are existing and finding safer spaces.
Gotcha.
And, like, not only are we uncovering and rediscovering and having people exist their own truth and trying to support them, also we're not doing surgery on children. You have to be 18 and above to have any type of surgery on a body when it comes to affirmation.
Sure.
So it's a lot of just unknown facts and a lot of fear tactics that are being used.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
folks don't understand. So they hear these things and they don't go read them for themselves, or it is scary, but we assume kids are straight.
Yeah. Right. Well, and nor should we really be listening to most mainstream media anyway, because they're just trying to pull out the scariest anger inspiring headlines to get you pissed off.
Exactly.
Anyway, so more often than not, like people were saying, well, so guys can just say I'm trans and walk into a woman's bathroom. Show me a single person who's done that. Like, really, like, show me a single person who's actually done that.
Right. And we know that the harm from bathrooms doesn't actually come from trans people. It comes from cis guys, cisgendered males, or the people who commit crimes in bathrooms.
Right.
And it doesn't matter the gender of the bathroom.
Right. Right.
But
so
we're not talking about that. We're not trying to reduce that crime.
And here's something that, I have mates, and I have mates that are in heterosexual relationships, married to women, kids, happy being heterosexual, that experimented with guys, that did. And some have shame around that, some don't. But like, it's like maybe there is a spectrum there. Like I remember as a boy having guy friends that I just couldn't get enough of. Like, I'm like, oh, they're the man. They're so cool. I want to be with them every second of the day. Do I want to kiss them or anything else? No. But there is that attraction there that if I was to even like eloquently deliver that at the time and place, oh, you're gay,
Right,
and so
we don't validate platonic relationships that are still intimate between men. You still have to hold the bro code, but you're gay, which is still like considered wrong for some reason. And also the idea, remember we talked about like that male kind of bestial carnality that exists. For some reason, that's considered higher in gay men. So it's like gay men are unable to control their sexual prowess. So they want everybody. So even if like, men, I'm straight, and that's supposed to deter a gay man because you have to like be deterred and deter gay men from like wanting you.
Well, that's one of the great myths too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do your thing, man, but just don't come at me. And it's like, dude, don't think so highly of yourself.
They don't want, but I bet you consent is understood then.
Yeah. Ah, there you go. Consent is clearly understood then. Wow. Okay. There you go. That's a good frame to educate around consent. I want to be respectful of time. So I want to ask you, with the time we have, how can a parent gauge their child to know what is truly age appropriate? Because that, I imagine, is a challenging thing to discover or figure out. A friend of ours shared with us that their daughter, who's, I don't know, probably 11 or 12, was in the car and was like, "Mum, what's come?" And she was like, okay, no, now we're here, now this. And so how do we gauge what it truly is age appropriate? Is it really like a child-led approach, or you tell me? I'm curious.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a good question. One, I'd always ask, what do you mean by come? Like, tell me what you think it is, because sometimes they just mean another word.
Right. Let them eliminate the possible need to have the conversation.
Right. To see. And then if they're really asking, I would want to get curious. I'm like, oh, where'd you hear that word? Because that's a really slang word for ejaculation, which is a body fluid that comes out of people who have penises and testes. Or it can also be a fluid that comes out of people with vulvas, and the fluid just looks different. Right. So sticking to medically accurate terms and medically accurate information. Also, if you don't know, tell them you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Let me circle back and find out. But thanks for asking me. I'm glad that you trusted it, because you're going to validate that they can come back to you.
Smart. And you also bore them with medical jargon. So they're like, meh.
Well, they're just like, oh, because do you want your friends to learn your kids to learn sex ed from their friends or from you? Or from the adult who is trying to mold them?
Right.
Because those people exist. And those people are giving your child information. And if we are the first bullies of our children, they go and find other safe spaces.
Right. So these parents that are in Florida that are scared and concerned about how sex ed is being taught, one of the best things they can do is take the first, be on the first foot and have the conversation themselves and do the work. It's not the teacher's job or the sex educator's job to teach your kids about this stuff. You as the parent, as the legal guardian, it is your responsibility.
Would love that. And all parents aren't going to feel equipped, and that's fine. That's why we exist, right? Sex educators exist. There's some parents with trauma who just can't. And that's absolutely okay. You build a community that has like beliefs that is still medically accurate, because out of our country, our entire country, only 17 states have medically accurate sex ed required in schools. 17. Wow. So they can tell you all anything and it doesn't have to be medically accurate.
Wow.
Right. So I had a kid come to me crying, thinking she was dying because she just got her period. No. And she couldn't stop the bleeding down there, and asked me to tell her mom goodbye for her.
Jeez.
Right. Or the son you're raising. What's the son that you're raising going to do if he sees somebody bleeds through on their pants? Is he going to point it out and laugh?
No.
Or is he going to be like, hey, you bled through. Let me cover this up for you. Give me my jacket later.
Yeah.
What is your daughter going to do when she sees your kid with a random erection?
Yeah.
Is she going to point it out and have people laugh at him because he's having a random erection that he can't control? Is she going to tell them that he's assaulting her because he's having a random erection that he can't control?
Random erections are real, people.
Yes, it's a part of puberty.
Yeah, I remember the pressure of like, oh God, not in this class.
Right.
Not in this class.
And now they're thinking that you're attracted to your PE teacher or whoever.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're relentlessly teased for it. So who are you raising and who do you want them to be? And at the end of the day, I ask every parent, and I have not got a negative yet. Do you want your kid to have a shitty sex life when they grow up?
Mm-hmm.
I've not met the parent that's like, yes, I want it to be horrible. I want them to not enjoy it. And do you want them to learn the way that you learned?
Number one, do you want your kid to have a shitty sex life? Number two, do you want them to learn the way you were taught?
Mm-hmm.
Great questions.
Right. And oftentimes the answers to both of those are no.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't need to know my kids' masturbatory practices. I don't need to know the sexual things that they're going to do when they're adults. I do need them to be safe. I need to know them to know that I'm a safe landing space. And if there's something they don't feel like they can talk to me or their father about, then they can talk to TT Margot. They can talk to TT Goody. They can talk to Uncle Ryan and get those perspectives. And dads need to be present in the conversation.
Okay. So yes, this is something we spoke about. I remember, so we were talking before this and I was like, when my daughter goes through this, go talk to mom. And you were like, she can talk to you too. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like? Oh, and actually I want to go there, but I also am still a little unclear of age appropriate. Like, how do I identify?
So
what
age
is
appropriate.
That? Yeah.
So there are the national sexuality standards that you can look up, and it actually goes by grade. It's like by the end of second grade, they need to know the names of their body parts. They need to know that they have a urethra, right? That's what they need to know at that age. They need to know an elbow. They need to start talking about consent. And so it is a little bit child-led, but you need to think about developmentally what's going on with their bodies.
The national
sexuality standards.
Sexuality.
Kids are hitting puberty as early as 8 nowadays, Brandon.
Yeah.
8.
That's true.
You thought you had until 12 and 8. The average scene of porn is 11. 11 years old, people will see porn for the first time.
Wow. So links in the show notes. Links in the show notes for that. We'll put that in. But okay, so it does kind of give you an idea of what they should know by what time. And so how do you Miyagi a kid who's possibly crossing the river too early in their development?
Yeah, so I don't know if there's a too early in their development because that's their developmental curve. What I can say is this is the safest way to go. Right? So what is safest? Is it safest for us to try birth control right now? Is it safest for us to talk about safe masturbatory practices? Do not heat up a banana in the microwave for a minute. It's going to be too hot.
Wow. Okay.
Right? You should not use, I had a client who used the end of a plunger for anal play as a teenager. I'm like, ooh, No.
Hygiene, no.
Safety, right? It's a wooden plunger.
Yeah.
Splinters. Nobody wants to explain that to a doctor.
Put the
And
apple
then,
pie on the windowsill for long enough.
right. Not a microwave, because those are third-degree burns now on your genitals. Because you
Oh,
hear things, right? People using
sure.
toothpaste as lubricant. Like,
Whoa.
the minty fresh, like tingly feeling that they felt in their mouths,
Oh
they
my
thought
gosh.
that maybe. I've also seen pictures of a grown woman using bleach as a genital wash because she didn't want to smell like fish.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So people
Okay,
harm themselves around
this
this.
is
So the information earlier rather than later. And if
right.
you don't know it, go find out. And it's a consistent conversation. It's not just one time.
Right.
Right? You're
You
not going to talk about consent just one time.
There's no birds and bees conversation. That's it.
No, it's all in pieces.
Continuous
It's
conversation.
all in pieces, and it's continuous. It's a revisit of like, oh, hey, remember we talked about when somebody tells you no, that literally means no. And that goes across gender. If he said no, that doesn't mean you go put your hands on him and force him to do something. He said no.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Love it. I really hope we empower our daughter to have a healthy relationship with her body and with herself. And no doubt we're not going to stick the landing in every conversation, but to know that we're willing as parents to hang in that conversation with her and not run from it or try and avoid it. That'll be.
And you can always apologize. So you can be like, you know what? I dropped the ball.
Yeah.
My bad. And it's never too late to go back and apologize.
Sure. Yeah. I like that. So bringing dads into the conversation. So, the previous mold has been when the boys go through boy stuff, dad, you're in. When the girls go through girl stuff, mum, that's your job. But many people listening, single parent households, you have to kind of hold both roles in many ways. You have to be the role model in many different facets. So how do you empower a father to get involved in these conversations with their daughters?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And the thing that I can say I've seen the most in my therapy practice is women feeling abandoned by their fathers when they hit puberty.
Yeah. I've witnessed that. Okay.
Yeah, so they're like, my dad stopped playing with me. I wasn't able to like hop on his back or sit on his lap or like all of these things. This affection really changed and shifted to let me know that I was different now.
Gotcha.
Right. And that was very harmful for them.
Sure.
They started looking for that attention and in other places from other people.
Because there is this kind of Tom Brady gets a lot of flack from people because he kisses his kids on the lips. And I'm like, it's his kids. And if they're cool with it, then that's their, but who am I to judge? And I can see how dads would get uncomfortable, especially if their daughters are developing, and so that's interesting. And how often are you seeing that? Like,
I have to say, so again, I've been doing this work for over a decade, but what I would say, at least in like, of the people who had dads who are active and there, I would say probably in about 70% of my cases, when that woman hit puberty, she felt some level of abandonment and pullback from her father. And the issue is because men aren't taught about female puberty, you're right? So in classes, when people had classes, they would separate the genders and they'd be like, this is the penis and this is what your body is going to go through. They didn't teach other folks about menstruation. About, hey, there's going to be a physical change. There's going to be some blood, but also there's going to be a mental change. And that mental change is going to look attitudinal. It's going to look moody. There's a thing called PMDD, which is a depressive disorder that goes with PMS. These are the signs of that something could be really wrong. Some people feel suicidal around their periods because of just hormone fluxes. People don't teach men that you have a hormone flux cycle like every 36 days, comparatively to 25 to 28 days when you have rushes of testosterone. Right? So none of that stuff. So dads need to get educated, to have that information. And B, they are providing the model that their kid is going to be able to look for. How do you take care of your lover when she's on her period? How do you take care of your daughter when she's on her period? right? What do you expect? And she's going to learn how to expect that same thing. It should be caring. It should be kind.
Yeah.
We need to be maybe a little bit more sensitive because we are losing some blood volume and people might feel a little bit more sick.
Yeah. It also, I think, shows respect from the father to the daughter, like respecting her and what she's going through or what she's experiencing.
Well, you're getting in dicey water, Brandon. You know, parents don't necessarily need to respect kids.
Oh, Christine and I were having that conversation. Like, how do we allow, because we're looking at all these different parenting styles and what is going to come natural to us. And, you know, I feel a calling to child-led and that in very many ways, you know, we're going to probably be a bit more Montessori, I think, than some other families. But I could see that looking like, yeah, she's got a seat at the table. Like my daughter has a seat at the table. Doesn't mean she has the, you know, the final say or determines the rules and laws. Maybe in some degree, but no, like for the most part, I think mom and dad have that, got to hold that down. Yeah. But yeah, like that mutual respect.
To and I think there's a difference there. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was done.
Oh, I think that mutual respect. And again, being from the South, I declare. I do declare, yes. I do not speak my accent anymore. The idea of respect was you do what I tell you to do, which is actually power. Yeah. What we want with our kids
because
is
I said
authority.
so. Because I said
authority.
So. Yeah.
Authority is, I do understand where you're coming from and I value your position. And I want to show you that I value your position. And that's what we want our kids to be. So yes, I respect my kid. My kid is a whole human. They're not just some little toy or doll I dress up. They're not devoid of voice. And I think specifically raising girls, and for me, raising Black girls, my job is to amplify their voice as loud as possible. Because when they get into the world, they will be told to turn it down regularly, consistently, in order to fit in order to flourish. So at home, I will amplify your voice as much and as loud as possible. So when you get into the world, maybe it'll be at a normal volume instead of diminished.
That's so beautiful. That's so, I'm feeling all the feels right now. Gosh, I feel like we need a part 2, part 3. Sex doc, Dr. Lexx, you are incredible. I am blown away. I've learned so much in this time we spent together. I love that we could go on some skinny branches together too. Probably felt more skinny for me in a sense because this is the world you live, right? Helping layman's like myself better understand and kind of open the mind a bit more. And I definitely feel like I've had some perspective shifts for sure. Just the notes I've taken furiously here are just some highlights. You know, the first victims of patriarchy are boys. You know, we're taught to betray our bodies with messages that are not our own. Innocence doesn't mean ignorant. And, you know, do you want your kids to have a shitty sex life? And do you want them to learn what and how you learned? Man, head explosion. Like, yeah, I'm gonna try do things a bit different than how I was educated and promise you I will likely wound my child in some form or fashion in the process because that's what parents do.
Yep, absolutely.
We wound our kids.
Absolutely. But I think you're a yellow belt. You say white belt, but I definitely think you're at least a yellow belt.
I'll take it.
I am so excited that you're in the world doing this work. I'm so excited that my kids are going to be in the world, sharing the world with yours and with your listeners who are like doing this transformative, like even listening, even being open to other perspectives. I'm excited for the world that we are raising because I think it's such a world of beautiful opportunity.
Oh, man. I'll tell you, I'm in. I want to be a part of this, this movement here. And I guess the best way to do that is to model it. Yeah. So Lexx, for our listeners, if you want to find out more about Dr. Lexx, you can go to lexsexdoc.com. That's LEXSEXDOC.com. Also, check out the Talk Sex with Lexx podcast. We'll have links to the show notes. Everything we mentioned will be in the show notes, as well as check out her book, These Are My Eyes, This Is My Nose, This Is My Vulva, and These Are My Toes. Linked as well. A nice tool that you can use to help educate the young people in your life.
Yeah.
and yourself around the human body. Is there anything I've missed, Lex?
No, I think that's everything. I thank you for letting me have this time with you.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. And I want to say until next time, because I feel like we've pulled some threads here that we could really yank in many different directions. So I am grateful that you were out there doing what you were doing. Consider me an ally. I want to lower the boundaries as best I can to keep this message alive and growing and out there. Final question I have for you. So we're pulling out the magic wand again.
Okay.
So, and you've probably answered this, but let me ask this for you. Magic wand. All of your mission comes to pass, right? This movement comes to pass. What do you feel like is the next step? What comes next? What do you feel like is the next hill to take, or the next thing that lights your soul on fire?
I smile broadly at this. If we can magic wand all of these things come to fruition for the next generation, I really want to reach back for our generation and the generation before us, our parents, and for some of us are likely for our grandparents, so they can live full pleasure in their retirement, in their older and aging bodies. It is sad what happens to older bodies. They're actually less touched with affection over time.
Right.
And we see them live so solo and so alone. I think that's so sad. So I think saying like, hey, what happened to you is not your fault.
Yeah.
I forgive you for what happened to me. And we can do this differently from now on, because we're seeing such a rift between parents now with our age groups of like not talking to their parents and, really isolating. So seeing that healing take place there, I think would be just harmoniously beautiful.
I love that you bring that up, because it's so easy to think about, well, previous generation's fucked, so let's go to the next generation and try and fix it. Where, and I've had that experience being a young person in this work, going, I'm sick of working with men after the fact when we could be doing a lot of prevention. Right. But not to say, well, older fella, this thing happened to you, sucks to be you, I'm going to try and help the next generation. Because there's intergenerational healing that can occur.
Beautifully said.
And I love that. And I mean, you hear about these retirement homes that just you have to go in and do some sex education in those places too.
Raging STIs though.
Raging STIs in that, like, Grandpa Bob, good on you, mate. Get after it, but take care of yourself, sir.
Oh, I threatened to fight my grandma's boyfriend because neither one of them could see the expiration date on the condoms. So I had to read the expiration date to them on the condoms.
Gosh. Wow. Yeah, like this was from your college days. You can't use this anymore. And I had to let Mr. say, no, my grandma come back with anything, that's your ass. Like, wrap it up, sir. I don't care, Miss Dorothy, whatever. My grandma come back with something because she gets regularly tested. Yeah. At 75, she gets regularly tested. I'm gonna take you out. I'm coming at you. Yeah. Because I know you're the only person she with, homie. So he's thinking I don't have to deal with her father. Right. I have to deal with her granddaughter. That's brilliant. Brilliant. Well, thank you for this time. I'm so grateful to have spent this time with you. I look forward to the next time we connect. And so, guys, all the links to the show notes, links to what we mentioned in the show will be in the show notes that you can get your hands on, so you can follow Dr. Lexx and her journey and the incredible work that she's doing and join her movement. I want to take this time to thank you, the listener, for joining us again this week for the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there's more than one way to be a man. What do you say, Dr. Lexx? You reckon we did that today? I think so. I hope so. I know so. I know so. Lots of love. We will see you next week. Bye. This has been the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. I have been your host, Brandon Clift, and I personally want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. Now, the fee for this episode is simple. If you found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, remember that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us, so long as we rip the pen out of fate's hand and become the author of our own story. So my friend, pick up the pen and we'll see you next week. Lots of love.